Hey guys, welcome back to the Great Ace Attorney Chronicles! And in the last episode, we started the Runaway Room, the adventure of the Runaway Room, which is the third episode. And, well, yes, now we're here in court without any clue what's actually going on. We met the client, we met the jury, we met the judge, we met Van Ziegs, who is apparently the prosecutor of this whole trial. And now we had a little witness testimony, and now the omnibus in which the murder took place is in front of us. And we're supposed to investigate it in court or something? We'll see that. Let's just get into it. We start off right now. So that's an omnibus. The omnibus. I can't believe they could bring something so enormous in here. Great Britain's courtrooms are amazing. As you can see, the omnibus is pulled by 2 horses and can carry up to 8 passengers. Four passengers seated inside in the enclosed cabin, and another 4 on the rooftop deck above. Every Londoner knows that the best views of the city's architecture and sights are to be had from the top of an omnibus. And I should point out to our foreign guests that there is a skylight in the roof allowing a view of the interior from the seats above. Ah, a skylight. Ah! The penny drops at last, I see. These 2 gentlemen were occupying the rooftop seats on the omnibus when the murder took place. That is how they came to witness the grim incident through the skylight. Ah, that makes perfect sense. Well, counsel, this is a first. In all my years behind the bench, I've never experienced the crime scene itself being brought into the courtroom. There are a number of important clues remaining inside the carriage, my lord. I would like to submit the omnibus itself as evidence. That is the prosecution's wish. Very well. I see no reason why not. The omnibus is hereby formally accepted as evidence. The omnibus has been entered into the court record. Oh, yeah. The 8-seater omnibus that was the scene of the crime. There were passengers both inside the carriage and the roof deck that night. I can't believe it. The entire crime scene entered as evidence? Yes, Great Britain is simply extraordinary. I could help myself a lot by giving that omnibus a thorough examination, seeing as it's here. Let us continue with proceedings then. Your cross-examination, counsel. Pray don't expect this Nipponese stray to understand the intricacies of British guards' cross-examination rights. All right, my first cross-examination in a British court. Focus, Yonosuke. Focus. Alright, but before we start off with that, I want to go into the court record and I want to examine everything. So we did that already, so we're going to examine the autopsy report first. Victim name, thrice feared Mason, male, age 54, occupation brickmaker, time and cause of death, 15th February, 10 p.m. to 11 p.m. Stabbed once in the abdomen with a knife whilst journeying in an omnibus due to internal hemorrhaging resulting from the trauma. Okay, so that's the crime scene photograph. Alright. Seems grim. We're gonna examine these thingies too, of course, the gloves. So let's check out these. This is definitely blood, isn't it? Not the most pleasant sight to be confronted with on our first day in London. Well, nothing will come from gambling now. No, by the way, is Mr. McGilded right-handed? Yes, I believe so. He was toying with a coin in his right hand a little earlier. Huh. Pity. If only he'd been left-handed. I think blood on either glove would be fairly incriminating, really. That's true. Unfortunately, that is true. Okay. Is there anything else on these gloves? Okay, there doesn't seem to be anything else. So we'll go back. And the most peculiar part about the court record is the omnibus. The 8-seater omnibus that was used in the scene of the crime. And, oh my god, okay, so we have a lot to examine here. So we're gonna do that, because we want to be thorough, right? So this is the route of the omnibus. Oh, you must have a wonderful view of London Street from up here. So people sit all the way up here on bitter winter nights with the cold air rushing past them? And they have to pay money to do so? But I can't imagine how cold it must feel. That just made me think of something horrible. Can you imagine being dragged around the city in the freezing cold as a punishment? Perhaps that is the real price you pay to stay out late. Okay, alright, so we do have, okay, the tires and this. I want to turn around first. So these are the benches, we already did those. There is nothing else here, as it seems. Okay, Phoenix Ride Omnibus. Okay, there we go. There's a little Easter egg for you guys. Okay, but nothing else on the outside. What about the door? Job Masters London. Well, let's open the door and go inside, shall we? The scene of a murder. It's horrible. Yeah, let's go inside. Okay, so we're gonna take a peek here, of course. This is where Mr. McGilded was seated. Okay, let's have a look at the poster first. Oh, that's a poster for the Great Britain exhibition that's due to start 6 months from now. There's a lot of focus being drawn to the Crystal Tower, the centerpiece of the whole exposition. Oh, the Crystal Tower. It's under construction already, I believe. People all over London must be fizzing with excitement at the prospect of such a grand event. Yes, I do believe that is true. So that's Mr. McGillet's seat. This seat looks reasonably soft, but it's actually rather hard when you sit on it, and only just wide enough for two gentlemen to sit side by side, really. Of course, an English gentlewoman would be dressed in such finery. It would be quite impossible for her to climb up to the roof deck, so she would have to be seated in here. A woman in a kimono would have the same problem. Women's clothes are very impractical, aren't they? I do agree. I am very, very fond of being a guy and not having to care about my looks. That is something very important to me, that I don't have to give a damn about things. Okay, so let's check out the notice first. Ah, that's a poster for the great exhibition that's used. No, okay, it's the same thing, so we're gonna skip that. Alright. Nothing else here, as it seems. But the blood splatter. Ah, the skylight. It's quite a large skylight, isn't it? Yes, quite large enough to afford a good view into the cabin from the roof deck. And there doesn't appear to be a handle or catch of any description. So I suppose it can't be opened from inside the cabin at least. Okay, it can't be opened from inside. There's nothing else though. What about... Okay, so here, nothing. Aha. Okay, we're gonna have a look at that first. This seat has a handle, it seems. Aha. There are things in there. But we're gonna turn around and look at the blood splat first. That's blood that's soaked into the seat. The victims obviously. Yes, and that seat would be clearly visible from the roof deck. Would you really stab somebody in full view of the other passengers like that? I wonder. Well, it was after dark. And there was a lamp on in here, so perhaps the culprit couldn't see anything outside through the skylight. Whichever way you look at it, it doesn't seem like it was a planned attack. That is true. So what's inside this little compartment here? Okay, we can look at it as a whole. This looks like all sorts of equipment that might be needed to keep the omnibus running. Feeding tubs, tools to repair wheels, blankets, horseshoeing tools. So it's a storage compartment for the coachman to keep his things, it seems. There doesn't seem to be any space for passengers to stow their luggage, that's for sure. Well, I don't imagine it would be very convenient for that purpose anyway. That is a total. So if I go once again, they'll say the same thing, right? Yeah, that's the same thing. So we're gonna skip that, and we're gonna leave outside again. Have you seen enough? Let's step back outside then. Alright, so we had a look inside. There doesn't seem to be anything else that's of interest. Okay then. We had a look at the omnibus. And now we're gonna start with the cross-examination. Sorry guys, I want to be thorough. It was the last bus of the evening, so I had few customers. I remember it well. Hold it! Yes, I think it was sometime after 10, wasn't it? Oh yes, sir, that's right, sir, yes. Ever so cold, it was freezing, in fact. And you had 4 passengers on board at the time, is that correct? Yes, that's right, sir. Not all traveling in the same parts of the bus, of course, though, no? And there were no other passengers when the incident took place. No one alighted, for example. You're quite right with that, sir. No other passengers like that. No, none. So nobody fled the scene of the crime then. I have to say, the boss insists on it running, he does. Every evening, the last bus of the day. But I do wonder sometimes if it's altogether worthwhile. Yes, sorry to say. What do you mean by that? Well, what with it being so cold and everything, and only making 20 pence on the run, you see? Yes, I spent that much at the on the way home, just trying to warm up again. The victim and the man accused of killing him were sat next to each other on the inside of the bus. Okay, let's press. Hold it! And you saw them through the skylight in the roof of the carriage. That's right. When you sit up on the top deck, the window's right there at your feet. Sorry, I have to figure out a voice for that guy still. There was a lamp on the inside, so I had a pretty good view. The 2 of them were wearing hats, and I couldn't exactly make out their faces. But there's not a shred of doubt in my mind that it was Mr. McGilded. Aha, okay, so they weren't seated as opposed to each other, they were seated next to each other. How can you be so sure? Well, how can I put it politely? McGilded is a gentleman of rather small stature. I couldn't have mistaken him for anyone else. Let's not forget that when the vehicle came to a halt, the only people inside the enclosed cabin were the deceased Mr. Mason and Mr. McGilded. There is no room for doubt here. I really wish there was. Then, out of the blue, the accused just reached over and plunged the knife right into his guts. But you just said they were set next to each other. Just a second here. Next to each other. Okay, but he can still reach over. That is not an issue, actually. Okay, so let's press. You actually saw the exact moment it happened? Didn't I already testify to that? Or are fair, dinkum, hard-working city bankers not considered trustworthy these days? No, I didn't mean that. This is no good. I've really got his back up. Perhaps you could just tell us what you saw in a little more detail, if that's...
My lord.
Juror number 3. What's the meaning of this?
My mind is made up, my lord. Completely and utterly made up.
Made up about what?
I don't like the stinking rich. Never have. They're always up to something or other that they shouldn't be. Every one of them. And that little leprechaun of a man is no exception. Well, he can't fool me.
Oh, that's not good.
There's no point wasting time listening to any more of this. That's my opinion in the matter anyway.
That is precisely what I was about to say. As the foreman of the jury, it's my duty to set a good example to my fellow jurors. Oh, what is happening here?
Let me see. Ah yes, it seems that's how the members of the jury give their verdicts.
With fire?
Apparently yes. White for innocent and black for guilty. As the 6 members of the jury make up their minds about the case. One by one, they each cast a ball of fire into the great scales of justice, as we saw a moment ago.
So if those enormous scales fall completely to the black side, does that mean...
Let's do our very best to make sure that doesn't happen.
Now I'm even more worried than I was before. Very well. The court acknowledges the change in the jury's stance. Counsel for the defense, please continue with your cross-examination. This is a nightmare. Alright, so... I'm gonna press again, though. You actually saw the exact moment it happened? Didn't I already testify to that? Ah, okay, we already had that, I just forgot. Okay, perhaps you could just tell us what you saw in a little more detail if you don't mind.
Why don't you ask the young man next to me?
Oh, me? Oh, well, yes. Okay, so we jump to him.
That's right, he stabbed him. I screamed, I did, I couldn't help it.
Hold it! He stabbed him, you say? And you were sitting up on the roof deck, were you?
Yes, that's right, sir. I was up on the roof seats. I remember seeing the little gent sitting next to the fellow that was stabbed. I'd been thinking about a new hat design, you see, so I was just gazing absent-mindedly around. But then I happened to look down through the skylight. It was sticking right up from his belly, that huge great knife.
A grim sight indeed. That didn't help me at all. The jury looked like they've even more convinced my client did it than they were before.
That appears to have made everyone more dubious that Mr. McGildet is telling the truth. If only we had some evidence to counter their suspicions.
Mr. First. Oh, yes, sir. Is this the knife you saw?
Oh, God, good grief! Yes, that's it, the very one, sir.
Is that? Yes, counsel. This is the blade that was driven into the victim's belly like a stake through the heart. That is a blade of considerable size, counsel. It is. Furthermore, the scabbard is emblazoned prominently with a certain initial. The letter M, which seems oddly familiar.
Please, no.
M for madness, perhaps? Or McGildet, possibly? Take your pick. It seems this particular big name one made a magnificent mistake.
Objection! But there are M's everywhere. Yes, like in Mason.
Objection!
This blade is far too extravagant for a poor brickmaker to have owned. No, this weapon of murder almost certainly belongs to the accused. Not conclusive, but certainly compelling, counsel. The murder weapon has been entered into the court record. Murder weapon, a largish knife that was found lodged in the victim's abdomen. Its quality and fancy ornamentation suggests it must be quite valuable.
My lord, if you'll forgive the interruption.
Juror number 2, go on.
Mr. McGilded is a pillar of society and a gentleman's word should be sacrosanct. However, those of us in service now, we must accept hard truths. Wait, what are you about to do? Dispose of the rubbish.
Uh-oh.
No! I don't wish to cause offense, but I do like to eradicate all traces of filth and grime. I have painstakingly typed every word uttered here today and cross-referenced all the facts. As such, I am now in position to draw the only logical conclusion.
Uh-oh.
Not again. That's 4 out of 6 jury members who've proposed a guilty verdict. There are only 2 left. We've had it. Every time I press the witnesses for more information, just make the situation worse. Nevertheless, what we need more than anything at the moment is more information. We're still very much in the dark. I suppose I'll just have to keep pressing the witnesses, knowing that more sparks may, well, fly. We mustn't give up hope that we'll uncover something that will give us a way to fight back. But... alright, I'll keep trying. I can't give up. I just need to keep calm and listen to the witnesses' statements again. As soon as I heard the scream, I stopped my boss, and then I saw it too.
Yeah, what did you see?
What exactly did you see? Well, sir, that would be the passenger, sir. Yes, collapsed on the floor he was.
And by the passenger, you're referring to the victim, Mr. Mason, the prick maker.
And then the other passengers had the knife in his hand, like this.
By the other passenger, obviously you are referring to the accused, Mr. Magnus McGilded.
And then he plunged it down like this, stabbing on the other passenger in the belly. What?
My lord, I wish to speak.
Yes, juror number 5. Do I take it that you too?
As the master of the London Guild of Coachmen, the idea of a murder being committed in one of the city's carriages is utterly abhorrent to me. It wouldn't be right to make a decision before hearing all the facts, though, I said to myself. But I've heard enough now. The horse has bolted, as they say.
No, please just keep an open mind.
Gee up now, Silverblaze. The finish is in sight.
Okay, so this doesn't look good at all.
Pepper's a long-standing member of the guild, and I trust what the man says.
Oh, thank you, sir. You're too kind, sir.
This is too unkind, sir. Which now means that 5 jurors agree to condemn this man. Madam Juror number 6.
Yes, dear. What can I do for you?
You have heard the testimonies of the witnesses in the stand.
Oh, yes, I certainly have. Still got my hearing, you know.
Then, pray tell, why are you yet to pronounce your leaning?
Well, dear, the thing is, I'm a creature of habit, me. I always go to the park at around this time of day and sit on a nice bench and get on with my knitting. There's a lovely little park just near where I live. McGilded Park, it's called. The gentleman donated to the city, you know, to put a smile on his face, as he said. I can't imagine such a fine young gentleman would have it in him to take another man's life.
He's always doing wonderful things for the city.
That's right, a man like that wouldn't stab someone, surely.
Mother, may we go to the McGilda Public Library later and borrow some more books?
How many Londoners live with their heads in the clouds? Do you people not know? What kind of a man Magnus McGilda really is?
What kind of a man he is?
The philanthropist Magnus McGilda has enough wealth to purchase the entire city he claims to value so highly. But where did all that wealth come from? The client is a Shylock, sir, and one with the very darkest of souls.
What?
Stone the crows!
McGilda lends money at extortionate rates of interest so his victims have no hope of repaying him. When they default, he takes possession of everything they own. He's a vulture that preys on the weak.
I've never heard any mention of that before.
Your faculties haven't deserted you, I'm sure, madam. So has this thought not crossed your mind? Would a man wealthy enough to buy London in its entirely not have a carriage on his own? What possible reason could this man have to make use of a public omnibus service?
You're not saying that?
The victim, a poor brickmaker, had next to nothing to his name, save considerable financial liability. It will come as no surprise that his creditor was the accused, Magnus McGilda. But let it also be known that the very day Mr. Mason was killed was the final repayment date for his debts. Good gracious! The brickmaker was destitute. He had lost his house, he had not a shilling with which to repay his debts. And in the end, this pitiful soul had the very last thing he owned taken from him, his life. By the merciless philanthropist pretender, Magnus McGilda.
I don't believe it. If I might add something briefly. Mr. Sato, you claim that the victim had been lent money by Mr. McGilda. But where is the evidence to support your claim?
Pray, forgive the discourtesy of filling my hallowed chalice in a court of law.
Ah, there it is! Lord von Zieg's hallowed chalice! How can this be considered acceptable?
But I find myself in unexpectedly good humor. I had heard ladies from the Far East could show great courage, but I didn't expect to experience it myself.
Ah, as judicial assistant to the defense, I am simply doing my job.
What a pity your display of courage isn't vain. This is the debtor's ledger, which details all monies loaned by the accused. You will find the victim's name clearly recorded inside.
Oh,
Allow me to present this ledger as evidence. And pray forgive the discourtesy of raising my chalice in a toasted enigmatic ease at the same time. A marvelous toast, Counsel. I will gladly accept this new evidence. The debtor's ledger has been entered into the court record. Debtor's ledger, a catalogue of people who had borrowed money from the defendant at a high rate of interest. It includes the victim who had owed 20 guineas. Guineas. Guineas must be guineas, right? Oh yes, 20 guineas. The victim owed a considerable sum. And the accused made quite certain he had ample recompense.
Well, it would seem I've had the wool pulled over my eyes.
Regrettably, madam, that is the modus operandi of the accused.
And it's such a pretty little park, too. What a scoundrel.
Uh-oh. No.
Still, maybe it's all for the best.
wait a minute. Let's think about this a little more before...
I don't stand for nonsense.
Uh-oh. Okay, it's over now? Uh-oh.
That was it? The last juror's decision? According to this encyclopedia of British law, when all members of the jury have concluded that the defendant is guilty, court proceedings are suspended and the presiding judge will deliver the final verdict and sentence. That's what it says here.
The final verdict? It's over then?
There's a footnote though.
A footnote?
However, the defense...
All 6 members of the jury are now in agreement in this case. Allow me to convey my respect for your swift and righteous decision. According to the law of this country, I will now conclude the trial by delivering my final verdict. I trust here are no objections.
Mr. Sato, just tell me one thing. Yes?
You were in the middle of saying something before. The footnote in your encyclopedia of British law. However, the defense? What did it say next?
Oh yes, of course. One moment. When all members of the jury have concluded that the defendant is guilty, court proceedings are suspended and the presiding judge will deliver the final verdict and sentence. Then the footnote says, however, the defense has the right to demand a summation examination of the jurors at this point.
A summation examination?
Objection!
A summation examination? From which century has that tome you have there been resurrected? Judging from the binding, I would say that book is at least 50 years old. Any modern text on British law wouldn't even give such an antiquated procedure a mention. It's a relic, long forgotten, and certainly no longer practiced. So you're out of luck.
What even is it, Mr. Sato? This so-called summation examination. One moment, and I'll read about it.
You would demand the right to the procedure before you even understand what it entails? Typical Nipponese.
All right, Mr. Naruto, I think I understand. It seems that under this procedure, we would be able to appeal to the members of the jury.
To do what exactly?
Appeal to them to change their leaning and reverse their decisions. And it says here that if successful, the proceedings of the trial must be resumed.
Make them reverse their decisions. Yes, in times gone by, barristers will use a summation examination to attempt to influence the jury's decisions. But that procedure became something of a formality with no practical benefit really, so it rather fell out of use.
I wonder why.
Because it was devoid of purpose. Changing just one member of the jury's mind would be hard enough, let alone several. No self-respecting defense barrister would even assert his right to try in this day and age.
Still, I don't see any mention of the procedure actually being formally revoked.
What are you suggesting?
I'm suggesting that although it may be antiquated and largely forgotten, it isn't yet extinct. What do you think, Mr. Naruto?
A summation examination. Our last possible option. Do we assert our right to carry it out, or admit defeat? Well, of course we won't forget it. We will assert our right, but we will do so on the next episode of the Great Ace Attorney Chronicles, when this summation examination is going to take place.